Welcome to Sci-Fi Frontier. I'm Dominic, and this is a new segment I'm doing for my channel where I'm going to talk about a lot about Star Trek, but other science fiction stuff too. But it's going to be different because I'm not going to be alone in this one. I'm going to have a co-host, and my co-host...
My name is Wally.
And my co-host's name is Wally. So we're going to start off with this first episode, and we're just going to talk a bit about maybe some Star Trek news at the end here, and then we're going to... But first, we're going to start off discussing how we both got into Star Trek and why we like Star Trek and what Star Trek means to us. So I'm going to have you go first. So how did you get into Star Trek, and what was your first dip into the pool?
Well, really, my first experience with Star Trek was purely by accident. I just happened to be changing channels one day, and just lo and behold, the first episode of Star Trek The Next Generation was on the air, and it had just started. So I figured, you know what, there was nothing else on after I went through my channels. I just went right back to it and immediately just fell in love with it. It was glued to the TV, watching Jean-Luc Picard go over his ship and introducing his characters or his officers and picking them up from different various places, and the interaction with Q, and it just was a very, very interesting start to something that's felt very near and dear to my heart since then. I was never ever an original series fan, which I know a lot of you out there may have an issue with that, but I still to this day can't quite get into the original series, but I understand the lore of it. It was the precursor to the TNG, and I can appreciate that. I just can't get into it. I've tried and I want to, and I just can't. I don't know why.
Maybe doing this podcast together, maybe we can change that.
Well, we'll see based on what we talk about here as we go along, so we'll see.
So my way into Star Trek was through the original series, because I can't remember a time before there was Star Trek. Like, there was always the original series, was always on TV, and it would always be on after school, so I would come on. And back in the day, you probably know this as well as I do, you only had two channels, Peasant View.
Pretty much,
so
yep.
There wasn't much on, so it was either Bob Barker or Star Trek. So I chose Bob Barker. And so I got into that, and then fell in love with the films. And the first movie I saw in theaters that was a Star Trek film was Star Trek Search for Spock. And then it was Star Trek 4. When I went and seen that, it had a trailer for The Next Generation at the beginning of that. And then I was like, wow, what is this? And then when Next Generation started, same thing. I was like, this is awesome. And then just been into Star Trek ever since, and have just... It's easily one of my favorite sci-fi franchises.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I own all 7 seasons of the original the Next Generation, and I've watched them to death. You got them on Netflix. You can get them just about any channel that you want, reruns on cable networks and all that kind of good stuff, Sci-Fi channels, everything like that. Constantly, if you're just looking for a good episode and you can't find anything on, pull up an old episode of Star Trek and you can just get right back involved in it, even though if you've seen it 100 times. Yeah, it's just easy to rewatch and just love it over again. Yeah,
it does have that effect. Yeah, it does. So now, with that being said, how do you think the new direction Star Trek's going now? What do you think of it with Star Trek Discovery? And
well, I can honestly tell you that I am not impressed at all with Star Trek Discovery. And I'm getting a lot of the same feeling I had when I'm trying to get into original series, but I think it's a lot more appreciation for the original series over Discovery, because I watched the episodes of Discovery. I think I've only watched the first 4 or 5 episodes, and I just don't want to go back to it. The characters are just uninteresting, and the look of the whole series just doesn't fit with what was explained or tried to,
Yeah, it doesn't really fit in with the rest of the lore.
Yeah, just everything is completely gutted and changed around, and I know little things like we're not sitting here, we're not hardcore Star Trek fans. We're fans of the show, but we're not, we don't have shield modulation frequencies for the Defiant on episode blah, blah, whatever, anything like that.
But we got a passion for it.
But that's absolutely right. We have a passion for it. But when you sit there and you look at the sets of a ship that's supposedly smaller than the original series Enterprise, and the bridge is far more vast and in scape just looking at it on TV, and then you watch an original series and they're so crammed together, and I'm like,
well, it's bigger than Galaxy class bridge.
it almost seems like that, and the technology is out of place. It's far more advanced than the original series. Like, season 2 hasn't started yet. It'll be another week or so.
Yeah, another week, I think so. Yeah,
something or based on where we are right now. But they're going to be on the Enterprise after the events of the last episode of the first season. I know that much, even though I haven't watched to it. But like, is the comparisons going to stay the same? Are they going to have all of the technology changed on this version of the Enterprise, even though it's Prime Universe?
Yeah, that's
quotations.
It seems to me, I've heard there's all kinds of different reasons. I've heard that there's this copyright thing where everything has to be 25% different, and then they say they want to do a visual reboot. It kind of seems to me with Discovery is they kind of want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to treat it like a reboot, but then they want to sell it to you as Prime Universe, which I don't think they can have it both ways.
No, I don't think so either. I think it's completely going to just... I know there's people out there that are probably going to be hating what we're saying, and they love Discovery's show based on it just being Star Trek. Well, I mean, yeah, I'm a Star Trek fan, but not this Star Trek. This Star Trek just doesn't feel like Star Trek.
No,
it's
it doesn't.
not. It just doesn't fit for...
It doesn't have that, I don't know, uplifting, hopeful feeling that you had with the other series.
Yeah, it just seems like everybody's in some kind of turmoil. Even like the first officer, again, because the characters are so uninteresting. Like, I don't even know what his name is, but he's the most interesting character. Like the Michael Burnham character, I think what her name was.
Yeah, Michael Burnham.
Like,
yeah.
If she's the star, I mean, I am not interested in watching what happens to her. If she went back to her penal colony, I would say
she's not a very
okay,
compelling character.
Yeah, I mean, it just... I understand they're trying to branch out with that kind of stuff, but her original captain seemed more interesting.
Yeah, it did. Yeah,
like
Captain Georgie was a more interesting character, and they killed her off right away.
Yeah, exactly, and that's... I mean, if I was in that boat, would I have done that? No, I think I'd have probably used her as a transitional piece. Just she'd be the mentor figure, I think, is what I would have tried to use her as, and then just keep her integrated into the Discovery lore instead of the whole mirror universe thing. Which, again, I don't mind the mirror universe thing, but it was like it was just a surprise thing as they're going along, going, okay, this isn't working, so we're just going to throw in a random. Yeah,
there seemed to be like some course corrections going on. Because
it's
from what they originally had planned. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, that's how it felt to me. But I don't know about you, but I have a funny feeling it's pretty much the same feeling for you.
I've watched all of season 1 of Discovery, and it was pretty. One big thing is the radical redesign of the Klingons.
Yeah, again, you may as well not even have called them Klingons. They don't look like Klingons. Their ships don't inspire the Klingon race. No. They just fallen right off the wayside. Just, again, I didn't like it. They're too overly... I don't know. There was an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation when Worf, the whole crew de-evolved.
Yeah, I remember that one.
And I get a lot of that feeling from the look of those Klingons.
Yeah, they're like
based on what
Klingons or something.
From what Worf ended up becoming on there, running through the ship, pounding on quarter doors and things like that. And I mean, they weren't quite as detailed as that de-evolved Worf was to what they are. But I get that kind of feeling to them, and they just don't look interesting. Again, they're just... you'd have been better off calling them a completely new species of...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they would have been better off just having them a whole new alien race.
Exactly, instead of...
Like, the ship designs were, in my opinion, just disgusting for the Klingon ship design. They didn't look like Klingon ships. The Praise were radically redesigned.
Yeah.
So,
even the same thing could be said about the Federation ships. They were just not designed in the classic... Federation style... saucers. I mean, yes, they had their nacelles, they did have their saucers, but they didn't look they didn't look developed.
Yeah, they didn't look like they really... Like, that's the only thing now. This is where we probably will disagree on this point. Is the only thing I like about the show is, even though it's out of place, I do like the design of this Discovery. Yeah,
you're right. We're going to have a disagreement about that because I really don't like the look of Discovery. It's
but
just...
the first... Now, that's actually... They had two designs of Discovery. The first time they showed that ship, they changed it because they made it a bit more sleek and made the nacelles longer. I think I preferred the actual first design that they showed with the shorter nacelles. It looked more like closer to the Ralph McQuarrie design because that's what they're basing it off. Those Ralph McQuarrie designed an Enterprise that they were going to do for a Star Trek made-for-TV movie back in the 70s. It was going to be called Star Trek Titan, and he did some designs, did some paintings, and basically it has the same wedge and the same... It's pretty much Discovery, but I mean, they've changed it a bit.
But, they just tweaked
But they heavily based it on Ralph McQuarrie's old design for the Enterprise for that never got made. But the first time you saw Discovery, it looked a lot closer to the Ralph McQuarrie design, which kind of gave it more of a 70s feel. So I thought it would have fit better, at least a little bit closer to like the original series if they kept that. But then when they went back and tweaked it again and sleeked it out, made the nacelles way longer and made it more sleek looking. It made it even more advanced, and then because it was a solid disc in the first design, then the second design they kind of hollowed that disc out, and they had struts connecting it to the middle part because that disc part rotates when they go through a folding space or whatever.
Yeah, for however they make that work. So
yeah,
if it's an engineering quarters or a living quarters, I don't know how the people who are on that ring that spin around like that are.
Yeah,
but I mean. Designs aside, it's still, for me, it's still not the way I would have gone. I know there's probably not as many different variations you could make of different ships, but even in the original series and the Next Generations and Deep Space Nines and Voyagers, when you saw those ships, they're all designated class ships, right?
Yeah.
Like the Galaxy class is an exploration ship. You've got things like the Soyuz class ships that are more science-based, and then you got your medical frigates. And you look at Discovery, and you get the idea that it's kind of like an experimental class, but it's not designated as such. But again, if they're following the Prime universe, when you go further in the future to Galaxy class, Sovereign class, those types of ships, there's not even any hints of this type of a technology having been worked off of. Okay, again, I get the fact that the Discovery is an experiment in this time frame for this time period, I guess. But it just... If they're only making the one, then... What happens to it at the end? Do they just blow it up, and then are they just going to let all the technology just explode on it, and then never ever try and refine it?
Mm-hmm.
Like obviously the drives and everything. I'm not a fan of the drives. I don't like the
spore drives.
I don't like the spore drive. It's another thing for Star Trek that could have been taken away based on Voyager. Now, if they had this spore drive technology all the way back when, and you get Voyager all the way back, up in the future, and they're trying to find a way back, don't you think they would have gone back and trying to unearth some of that old technology and figure out a way to help them to get them home faster? And it's just, again, I don't know if the creative teams or the people writing it are they not fans, or did they not watch all of these series?
I get the impression they don't, either they didn't watch it, or they're not knowledgeable, or they just don't care.
It's tough to speculate on that based on what we're talking about, because we can't really corroborate or not. Sorry, not corroborate is not the word, but we can't really. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We can't make sure that this is what the problem was.
Yeah.
Like, is this really why they're doing it this way? And then they're just jumping from episode to episode. They're doing it to test subjects that are going, man, and okay, well, we're going to change it for this. We'll take a piece of this from a original series, we'll take a piece of that from Next Generation, and then we'll just try and integrate it all in there and see if it works, and then see somebody gets see if we get a little bit more of a smirk or a smile out of somebody. Like, again, for me, I'm not impressed with the show. I just don't want to go back and watch it. It almost makes me mad.
Yes.
So.
Oh, I know what you mean. Yeah. So then, with that being said, like, what are your thoughts then on the J.J. Abrams movies, those ones that take place in the Calvin timeline?
The Calvin timelines. I mean, okay. The premise of it is a good idea. Again, I think with having Spock Prime go from the Prime universe to the Kelvin timeline here, make some alterations. I feel like these three movies that they've done shouldn't have been just a continuation. I think if they were going to stop them at 3 or 4 due to the cancellation, if that's what they were going to do. And unfortunately, with Leonard Nimoy having passed, I would have tried to have Leonard Nimoy's character Spock Prime go back to his Prime universe, and help it continue on, right, and stop whatever he was planning to do. Go back far enough to stop the destruction of Romulus, I would assume was his original plan, and then just continue the Prime universe. But it just, those three movies, the first one was really good. Second one was okay. I mean, it was supposed to be Wrath of Khan. It was a little twisted, but more or less the same thing. And the third one was just, I don't know what they were doing with that one. Like, they blew the Enterprise up right at the beginning of the show, and like at the end of the movie, you still didn't even see the Enterprise back.
No, you just quickly seen it getting rebuilt, but then that was it.
But who's to say that was another Enterprise? What if that's just another Constitution class that was just being, panned across just because that was in the fleet yard? You know what I mean? Like, there's more than one Constitution class ship in the Starfleet. So I mean, again, you know what I mean? Like, obviously that's the image they're trying to project, but.
Now, with my feelings on those films, I like the idea that they used an alternate timeline. That way, it doesn't affect the Prime universe, and then that way they can pursue, like, they're not stuck, making a prequel, because it would be hard to make a prequel series with Kirk and all them without violating canon, a pre-established canon. This way, they can kind of go off and do original storylines. So I thought that was kind of cool that they did it the alternate universe route, and I liked the first two. I didn't mind them, but the last one, the Star Trek Beyond, I didn't really care for. That was kind of boring. And and the other one, the Wrath of Khan one, they almost should have. They really should have casted somebody else as Khan.
Yeah, I don't think Benedict Cumberbatch was really the right kind of, like, you got your source material from what Khan was with Ricardo Montalban, and there's no comparison. You'll never find another Ricardo Montalban, but you have that kind of a play set, or character style that you want to kind of emulate that from. And nothing against Benedict Cumberbatch, he did kind of copy it, but it just didn't translate well enough
it didn't
for me.
Quite,
like, it's, again, he did a good job. I wouldn't. He's not my memorable Khan.
No, he's a good actor, but they almost should have made him a different villain or something. Just called him something else.
Again, but if you're remaking Wrath of Khan, you can't call him anything else. So I mean, it's another one of those rock in a hard place kind of things. Again, if we're going back in time and we're changing the events for this Kelvin universe, and it's going to stop after 3, and we're not going to carry this on with a TV series or something to, let's say they would have taken. The original series ended after 4 seasons?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they do another 4 seasons of a continuation of where the original series didn't get to?
Yeah,
they could
have done that. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, so would that have been a better idea? Yeah. Would you have gotten all of your big cast, Chris Pines, Chris Hemsworth, all of that in there? No, you wouldn't. But if again, I think if they were going to do 3, do it as an offshoot. Put Spock Prime back into the Prime universe and just let those events happen as something that happened, and then see where it carried on from there. I think still would have been a better offshoot than because again, if you're changing the Star Trek timeline, you got to continue it on, and there's really no insight or anybody's trying to continue that storyline.
Mm-hmm.
And then we jump back to this Discovery thing, which is pre-Kirk, and we were already talking about the movies that were just when Kirk was in Starfleet Academy.
Yeah.
So I mean, why are we jumping so far around for everything? I think they're looking for a foothold that's just nobody can seem to get their foot into.
Yeah, they seem to keep wanting to go back. They should go forward with Star Trek.
That's exactly look at the original series to Next Generation, and then okay, we didn't jump that far ahead, but Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise was a throwback again to original. And again, I didn't mind Enterprise. I still never watched it all, but I don't mind that series. I much more prefer to watch Enterprise over Discovery. But again, that being said, but if they're stuck for ideas, why don't we just take from the last point of the Prime universe and then jump that 20 years ahead like they're doing with Picard, or jump it another 100 years and let's update everything, and the continuing voyages, and let's put a different letter on the Enterprise again. You know what I mean? We got plenty of letters left in the alphabet. Was a
That's true.
Picard line, right? So I mean, why didn't they go with that route?
Now, that's a good segue though into, because there's two stories that I want to talk about concerning the new Picard series. So the first one is from Screen Rant. So this one, Picard leads radically altered life in new spin-off series. So I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but Picard will lead a radically altered life when his new Star Trek spin-off series begins, according to creator Alex Kurtzman, following the success of Star Trek movie franchise, which featured the cast of the original series. And then, so basically it says he's going to be radically altered in this one. So expect the unexpected. So does that make you kind of wary of this new series? What do you think?
Well, again, it's a pretty vague explanation again. So where does radically altered come into? I mean, I've heard a lot of stories about what they're going to do with Picard. 20 years after Nemesis, he's no longer Captain Picard. He's not on the Enterprise anymore. Mm-hmm. So whoever's moved on to command the Enterprise now is now the new captain, new crew. Is it still the Enterprise E? I would assume. Who knows? But but I mean, if he's kind of like, is this a Picard that, say, the events of the Aborg, that when he was assimilated in the best of both worlds is finally caught up with him and he can't command anymore, and he's at that point where he's, he can't make discrete decisions, but he's still that figure that everybody still wants to talk to. The Klingon high counselors and the Romulan high commands. All those captains in there that he's had big interactions with. Is that all catching up with him? Is he?
Yeah, it'd be interesting. Now, my worry about this series is they're gonna do to Picard what they did to Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi. Are we gonna see like another great iconic sci-fi character just basically pissed over?
Well, I hope not, because based on what I saw from those Star Wars movies, and I know I'm gonna enrage the Star Wars community about this, but I don't like those Star Wars movies, and I did not like the way that they turned Luke Skywalker into that
bitter old
hermit. Yeah, like he almost seemed like disgusting to be around. He was just crabby, and when he met Yoda living on Dagobah by himself for all those years, he wasn't anything like that. No. So or Ben Kenobi, who isolated himself on Tatooine, again, he wasn't that.
So yeah, that's my fear with this new series is, are they gonna radically altered? Like, what are they gonna do with Picard? Is he gonna be this more dark character, bitter character? Is it gonna be like personality gonna be different, like from what we last seen, and when he appeared in the last movie he did in 2002? Like, so that kind of that part kind of worries me. But now the next story, so that'll bring us to the next story. Now the only thing about this new series that I do find compelling is this news that came out, is a Star Trek Picard show to deal with an event that radically altered the galaxy. TNG cast stars a possibility, which I certainly hope so. So basically it goes on, since it was announced last August, the new CBS All Access Star Trek show featuring Sir Patrick Stewart returning to the role of Jean-Luc Picard has been a bit of a mystery, but some new details on the show has now been revealed. Picard show to deal with the destruction of Romulus. The Hollywood Reporter has posted more from their interview with Star Trek executive producer Alex Kurtzman, this time focusing on what he had to say about the Picard series. In it, Kurtzman reveals a key point about the setting of the show and how it relates to other Star Trek productions. Kurtzman is referring to an event shown in the 2009 film Star Trek, which he co-wrote. The film established that in the year 2387, the planet Romulus was destroyed by a supernova, while Star Trek sets up the new Kelvin timeline. The events prior to Spock traveling back in time were part of the Prime timeline, and the Picard show is set in the Prime timeline. Jean-Luc Picard has a long history with the Romulans. Throughout Star Trek The Next Generation, the Romulans were one of the primary antagonists for the show, with Picard and the crew going up against them more often than the Borg. Picard was also involved in Spock's failed secret peace attempt to reunify the Romulans and the Vulcans. And in his final outing, Star Trek Nemesis, he faced off with his own clone who had taken over the Romulan Empire. And then it just goes on to mention the prequel comic that they did in 2009 where he was dealing with Spock before Spock went back in time and stuff. So it seems like they're gonna pick up the events that were shown in the 2009 Star Trek when Romulus imploded and Spock went back in time. So you've seen how that create that alternate timeline, but what we don't know is how that event affected the Prime timeline. So that's actually could make for an interesting story, the fallout from that. What do you think of that?
Well, like you said, if this is how we're going to deal with a radically different Jean-Luc Picard than what we remember, would that be because Spock went back and altered the timeline to the Kelvin timeline? So because he left that point, is there a hint of maybe what Spock did back in the Kelvin timeline that maybe affected the Prime universe, and then things just changed just marginally enough to make it that little bit different? Mm-hmm. Or are they going to try and just say, the Kelvin universe is the Kelvin universe, and we're just going to keep that completely separate from the Prime?
It seems like they're going to keep the Prime time still Prime. But now, is the Prime timeline going to look like the Prime timeline, or are they going to have it look more like Discovery? That's what I'm also worried about.
Well, again, if they're smart about it, they're going to leave the Prime universe the way the Prime universe should be. Yeah. They shouldn't be making alterations to it, barring the events of the destruction of Romulus. Yeah, okay, that's a pretty major Prime timeline alteration, but if we followed this events and they hadn't done the Kelvin timeline or anything like that, and we just done a continuation and then just have that 20-year gap to fill in to find out why the supernova went off to destroy Romulus. Yeah, okay, maybe that was a better way to continue the Prime timeline, but
because that would have been, with the destruction of Romulus, that would be a huge event in the Prime timeline.
Absolutely, it would be. So
because they would have to figure out what ramifications would that have for the Romulan Empire. Would their empire fall apart, and then how would?
But it also kind of has a little bit of a hint of, like, again, you go with the Spock to the Kelvin Prime timeline, and then you have Nero go in there and he destroys Vulcan. So now we're just looking at the same thing happening, just in two different timelines yeah. to two different races. So in one timeline the Romulans are hurt, and the other timeline the Vulcans are hurt.
Yeah.
So, and then they're looking for refugee status for however many didn't get off their planets, right? Mm-hmm. So, and again, the same thing will be with Romulus, but will the storyline continue on? Is what's left of the Romulan fleet going to mobilize, figure out, what they have left, and then are they going to blame the Federation and Spock for this, and then just, use what they have to, create an invasion force, so to speak. Like, is that what we're talking about?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it does make for kind of an interesting storyline if they handled it right.
Well, again, I think it comes down to, again, do you have the right writing team on board for this? Like, yeah. I'm thinking you're going to have all of the Prime Universe people back in place, the writers from TNG, from Voyager,
that's
Deep
what
Space
they should
Nine.
Bring back some of the original writers.
Get Rick Berman back in there. Get get everybody who was involved in the original Prime storyline or timeline, and get them to write it, fluently from a point from 20 years later on, right?
Yeah.
Get your source material, find out where things are going, and then move on. Like another major thing was there's supposed to be a war with the Klingons in between that 20 years. I'm pretty sure was supposed to happen. Now, is there going to be any mention of that?
Yeah.
So we'll see. I mean,
we'll see. Yeah.
Time will tell, I guess. But
so I guess that's probably a good place to end it. So, any final thoughts about the future Picard series? You excited for it?
Well, I am excited for it, but I'm kind of leery of it too, based on what's going on.
Same here. Like, I'm excited to see Patrick Stewart come back.
Absolutely.
But same here. I'm kind of leery.
Yeah, all I can do is just sit here, read what we can read online, and then just cross our fingers that this just stays true to what we all hope it's going to, or what it should be.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
All right. Well, that's the end of this podcast. So let us know what you guys think in the comment section, if you agree with any of what we said or you think we're all wet. And I will see you all at the next one. Thank you to all of my subscribers, and thank you for watching this video. And if you're new to the channel, like, subscribe, and share. And don't forget to hit the bell icon for notification when new videos are uploaded.